Hi, my name is Dimitris Pallis. I work as an ethical hacker for a company called Claranet. They're UK-based, and my day-to-day responsibilities include discovering vulnerabilities in websites, internet networks, and mobile applications. My career actually began back in Greece. I moved to the UK on 2018. Before that, I was working as a technical support consultant providing customer support for devices, talking with UK customers on a daily basis. Then I was actually a self-learner. I started discovering various resources online on how to break into networks, discovering vulnerabilities, and utilizing those. I started applying for jobs in the UK. So in 2018, I got my first role as a junior penetration tester in London. Working as a penetration tester involves discovering weaknesses and security loopholes in websites, internal networks, or mobile applications. That would mean, for example, a bank to contact us and ask us for what we call a penetration test. That would include scoping. This is the first part of the whole procedure, which outlines the specific parts that we will be testing. And then gathering all of those vulnerabilities that we've discovered in a number of days and reporting them. So that would include providing them with professional, concise reports, and then probably a feedback call to explain these vulnerabilities that we discovered. I would say the biggest misconception regarding penetration testing is that it is equal to a vulnerability scan. So when we actually conduct penetration testing, we do discover vulnerabilities and then exploit them to see how far that can get us. With a vulnerability scan, that doesn't happen. We usually have automated tools that discover a series of vulnerabilities, around 40 to 50% of the actual vulnerabilities that are in place. And then it ends there. Usually we get communication from clients mentioning that they have been running these tools, for example, and if that is enough for them to be secure. Well, that is a big misconception, and that is not the case, because it almost always takes a professional penetration tester to actually differentiate the actual vulnerabilities from the false positives and exploit them to later discover how far those can get them. The areas of penetration testing that I find most interesting are, first of all, internal penetration tests and mobile penetration tests. The internal ones include connecting to the client's internal network through a VPN connection, or actually going on site to discover vulnerabilities that usually simulates the ones that are being conducted by an internal attacker, someone, for example, who would walk into their offices, or a rogue employee. This is particularly interesting, actually, because we get to test various devices, for example, CCTV or devices in production that most of times include very important elements of their organization. So this is particularly interesting, and it's also a great training opportunity because the attack surface is vast. Now, every single test actually has their own individuality. That means even an external test where we get, for example, a list of IP addresses could be equally interesting, because it's a fact that sometimes from these external addresses we might be able to gather some weak passwords or outdated services that can get us access to the internal network. We started a group on Clubhouse last March during COVID, actually, during quarantine. And it was actually a great initiative at the time, because we managed to gather people who were willing to get into the industry, for example, students or anyone else with experience who would like to get a foothold, their first foothold into the cybersecurity industry. And we also had people on a C-level management coming to discuss with these individuals and consult them on what to do, for example, on their first role or on their first career steps. We also hosted discussions on latest attacks and latest techniques. So over time, we managed to grow our member community up to 30,000 in total, 30,000 members in total. And we're still going, actually. We're still hosting an event every Thursday talking about the latest attacks. So we're actually regularly hosting more events, and once per month, actually, we do have a discussion on Ask the Hacker, as we call it. So we've got an audience that makes questions, actually, about how to break into the industry and what are the most important tips in order to break into either penetration testing or other cybersecurity sectors. And we've also managed to gather very popular names in the industry that could guide these individuals, people who have built tools, like very popular tools that we as penetration testers use all the time, and CEOs, for example, CEOs of penetration testing companies, who would all guide students and, let's say, less experienced members of our group on what to do on their first role or on how to develop in their role. I would say the biggest single driver of change right now is the move to the cloud. Organizations are looking to benefit from the move to the cloud due to the efficiency and the fast deployment of IT services. Then we're also seeing rapid development in threat detection and endpoint protection technologies. And we're also seeing new trends like working from home and companies adapting the zero trust approach on security due to quarantine and employees working from home. It's even more difficult for IT departments to control the greater attack surface now that everyone been using VPN connections and their own devices to do their work. My biggest advice that I would give to people who are trying to break into the industry is to network. That means going to online social networks like LinkedIn or even Facebook. Facebook has particular groups such as LinkedIn, for example, to connect with professionals in your industry. Also, now that COVID and quarantine is ending, in-person events would be a good idea to, and online, of course, online and in-person events would be a good idea to try and network with professionals within the industry and ask them their opinion, their advice. Also, I would recommend the ones that have less technical experience, less practical experience, to sign up on various platforms. For example, the ones that provide bug bounty programs. These platforms actually have lots of clients that would let other consultants and people with less experience to sign up and discover vulnerabilities in major companies. And combining that experience, that practical experience, with certifications or a good CV, for example, that would land them their first interviews and hopefully their first role within the industry. Personally, I have an application called Feedly. This is an application that allows you to configure it in order to receive cybersecurity news and latest techniques and attacks. I'm also watching news on LinkedIn and Twitter. I'm following a specific number of people that would provide updates again on the latest attacks that came on surface and the latest tools. It is also a great resource, Twitter and LinkedIn, for new custom tools that are being made from the community. Also, the internal research being made from security consultancies is a great resource for people who are already working within the industry, and the ones that can also benefit are students and people less experienced, because those new attacks and research can be applied on real world scenarios, and also can be a great practice for people who are willing actually to break into the industry, and for those that would like to benefit or write their own research and blogs.